Hi everyone, welcome back to Mission 1820 and this week's episode of Have You Ever Wondered? You know, as always, if you're just joining us, we've been in a series called Books of the Bible, where we've been giving introductions into each book of the Bible in just 5 minutes or less. So if you're ready to get started, let's go ahead and dive right into this week's book. This week, we're in the book of James. This is the 20th book of the New Testament. And this is a letter that was written by Jesus' half-brother James to the first century Jewish Christians that were residing in Gentile communities outside of Palestine, somewhere between AD 45 and AD 48. Let's get a little insight into James. As it mentions, he's the half-brother of Jesus, and he was the oldest of Jesus' 4 younger brothers. Now, although James was Jesus' brother, he, along with his family, now this is according to the Gospels, they adopted a somewhat skeptical attitude toward Jesus' ministry. And it wasn't until after witnessing his brother's resurrection that James actually come to believe. And it was at this time that James emerged as the leader of the church in Jerusalem. And according to the historian Josephus, James was actually martyred in AD 62. Now, as we always do, let's dissect the book just a little bit. The book has 5 chapters in it, and it's broken down into 3 parts. Part 1 is the test of faith, and this is in chapter 1, verses 1 through 18. Part 2 is the characteristics of faith. This is found in chapter 1, verse 19 through chapter 5, verse 6. And then the third section is the triumph of faith found in chapter 5, verses 7 through 20. Now, throughout his letter to Jewish believers, James integrates true faith in everyday practical experience by stressing that true faith must manifest itself in works of faith. You see, James felt that it was not enough to just talk the Christian faith, but we must actually live the Christian faith, because the proof of the reality of our faith is really reflected in a changed life. James believed that genuine faith will inevitably produce good works in the Christian who is faithfully following Christ. And this is really the central theme of James's letter, around which he supplies some practical advice on living the faithful Christian life. James continually called for obedience to the law of God. Now, not the ceremonial law as we find in the Mosaic law, but actually in the moral law which we find within the 10 Commandments. The book of James looks a bit like the Old Testament book of Proverbs, but it's dressed up in like New Testament clothes. Its consistent focus on practical action in the life of faith is reminiscent of the wisdom literature in the Old Testament, encouraging God's people to act like God's people. You know, James is filled with direct commands to pursue a life of holiness, and he makes no excuses for those who do not measure up to that. In the mind of James, a faith that does not produce real change is a faith that's worthless. So by now, I'm sure you're asking yourself, yeah, this is all great, but is this book really relevant to us today? Well, yeah, it is. How well do your actions mirror the faith that you proclaim? You see, James places the spotlight on the necessity for believers to act in accordance with their faith. And this is something that we all struggle with as Christians. So as you read the letter from James, focus on those areas of your life that might not walk in step with your faith. And then allow his letter to encourage you to do good works according to your proclaimed faith. So with that, I hope that this introduction is going to help get you started in the book of James. So God bless, and thanks for watching.